What's up, everyone? Welcome to the 36 Chamber podcast. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by a friend, a mentor, and professor of mine, Professor Pedro, from Gracie Barra Bondi. He's like I said, primary school maybe, but he's in Brazil right now. So, all over the world we're going. How are you, Professor?
I'm very good, thanks, T.
Man, I'm really excited to speak to you because this podcast is particularly around the business of jiu-jitsu and martial arts. And when I think about people who are really good on the business side of things, I think about you really, come straight to mind. And then I realized I've never actually interviewed you on a podcast somehow up until this point. So I think I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited to be here. I think you invited me back on the day, but it was probably like a very turbulent phase of my life, and things didn't go. And then after I saw you doing so many other episodes with different people, and I was like, oh, I wish I could do that. And then eventually you invited me again, and I was like, no, I have to take this opportunity. Here I am.
There's no particular way we do this, but one thing I remember you saying to me very early on when I started with you guys at Gracie Barra Bondi was, I'm Brazilian in life and I'm German in business, and that stuck with me for a long time. But tell me what do you mean by that? Like, obviously it's like easy to understand, especially when you,
Man,
but
what I
yeah,
mean is the Brazilians, we are very happy people, but our reputation is to cut corners and have the call jeitinho brasileiro, is the way of Brazil to make things, right? And I particularly don't really like that way because, but unfortunately in Brazil, you kind of have to live that way to go through the way life is in Brazil, but I'm very German in a way that there's no cutting corners. We measure three times before you cut anything, so everything is a straight line,
hmm
and there's no mistakes to be made when it comes to business, and everything is very professional. We don't
yeah.
cancel classes, we talk professionally, we have a posture. I think that's what I meant back on the day, because Germany is very like well known about the
Efficient.
manufacturing and
Yeah.
efficiency and quality control, but I have that happiness of Brazilian as well. It's a
Yeah.
combination.
I thought it was a really nice analogy and a great balance, and I think it was a great tone to set in such a simple way. On that similar vein, I remember actually one thing you also said to me was because you're a family man as well, and you said, T, you can contact me for anything, but don't contact me on a Sunday. Like, unless the building is burning down, don't contact me on a Sunday.
But
And yeah,
it's amazing how you remembered some of my
it
saying.
stuck with me. It stuck with me.
Man, I my entire Gracie Barra career, let's say, I I'm the kind of person that like I run like a very successful school, the one that we worked together back on the day, Gracie Barra Bondi, right? And a lot of people they think, oh, Pedro's very lucky because of the location and etc. But I'm a person that I wake up thinking of Gracie Barra and I go to sleep think of Gracie Barra every single day of the week. And I believe nowadays you know in a different perspective because you became a school owner as well, which is very hard to switch off your brain from the business, especially when you have some turmoil happening,
Yeah.
right? And my Sundays is the day that I like to not think about it.
hmm
And it's hard. I always think about it anyway. But
Yeah.
it's hard. I try not to watch like check my emails from Friday afternoon because if I have a bad one, it will consume my whole weekend.
hmm
And Sunday is the only time that I can literally focus 100% on my kids and my wife. And then for me, it was like a very precious time. So if someone calls me on Sunday, it's something very, very bad has to happen. Otherwise, just wait for Monday.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think like you say, with now the perspective of school ownership, it made a lot of sense because, and like you say, when you're owning a school, you're running a school, and jiu-jitsu is already your hobby and your passion, and it becomes so, and you care loads about the students, and you want to be there for them anytime they need, but it becomes so all-consuming and overwhelming that I think you need to protect a day for yourself so that on the other 6 days of the week you can give the best of yourself. Did that take you a long time to learn, or how did that work?
Man, I believe I succeed quite a lot because I've done a lot of mistakes along the way, T. Plus, I read a lot of books and I try to take advice from people that have been there before, and I try not to replicate the mistakes they did, but we still gotta try. It's like playing jiu-jitsu, right? We try position so many times, you then figure out the mistakes and you keep polishing it. Uh, but back to your question is, I was very, very workaholic. I'm still am, and I got in a time where in the beginning of the business we call the honeymoon of the business. The first 3 years everything is beautiful until big problems start arriving, and then you have to be good in solving problems. It's like jiu-jitsu. It's like you in the white, blue belt, go to your purple, brown belt, and the problems get harder. And you
Hmm.
have to be more technical and solve those harder problems in the same time frame. And when the problems are getting harder and harder and harder, if you don't give your mind a space, like a escape valve, I call, just to be yourself, we start running on red. And a lot of people in business, specifically in jiu-jitsu industry and Gracie Barra, after years they run on red and they kind of like explode and they change careers or they lose motivation. So I start regulating myself with that balance. Some people they don't believe in balance. They think you have to be all in. I was all in, but once it started affecting my how can I say my physical life and mental life, I was like, no, I just I need my time off to be with my family, to go surfing, to go fishing, to go snowboarding, to do my fun things because otherwise I couldn't sustain the long term of the path that I want to take. So I wasn't like that in the very beginning, but I'm a very aware person that I adapt quite quickly to things. So I saw that part consuming me. I start like making a quick change just to calibrate better how I could spend my energy, and that's how I became very particular on my Sundays.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess it makes a lot of sense. Kind of that optimizing for long-term success rather than sprinting and burning yourself out too quickly. Because, like the great analogy you made, jiu-jitsu, just like running a business, is a long-term endeavor.
Yes, dear, yes, and you said something very interesting that I think about a lot in the long term strategy. And people that succeed the most in the industry are not the ones that just the most excited, are the ones that can last longer in the game with the consistency, right? It's like training jiu-jitsu. You can become a very good a fighter, let's call it. But then people they just go for a big holiday, take 3 months off, and they overweight, they can't move, and they take another 3 months to train again. So they oscillate too much. which I'll rather be on my 70, 80% the whole way through without oscillations. But for that to happen, I have to find those break times in between to recalibrate myself and keep going, and the results start coming eventually.
Yeah.
More than those that just have the sprints and stops, sprints and stops. So constancy will beat, in my opinion, the sprints.
Yeah, you made that link between the belt system as well, and have you felt that as a school owner now running? I know you got multiple schools. We'll definitely go into that. Did you feel when you started off, were you already just great at business, or like how did you progress through that system?
In terms of business,
Yeah,
you mean? Um, I believe, T, that I'm a very curious person, and I am always watching what's around. I always try to understand other schools, right? For example, we had one school in Canada that was developing itself very quick, and then I go there and connect with Professor Rodrigo Carvalho and try to understand everything he does in the school, and then I Gracie Barra Simi Valley, they're doing so well in different areas, and I travel to America to meet Professor Andre and Almeida and understand what he's doing, and then we use all of the Gracie Barra summits to go there. Of course, to have that connection with everybody, but I'm always in a mission to see who are the guys in the room that have what's missing in my game
I
of business, let's call that,
yeah.
and I connect them. And so it's yeah, so you see, like in the beginning, the honeymoon of the business, and then you start developing, you go to the next phase, let's say the blue belt, and then you get the purple belt. Before the blue belt and purple belt, there's a lot of people they give up in that phase,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
And that's where I believe the big problems start happening in business, and a lot of people they lose interest or they get stuck in there. You see a lot of jiu-jitsu schools not growing, and they keep in that like cap. Imagine you got to a blue belt and then you're not going anywhere anymore, and you see people in blue belt for like 5, 6, 10 years sometimes,
mm,
and then just have to figure out what's missing in the game to go to the purple belt. And I did with Gracie Barra Bondi the same. I always try to understand what's missing to go to the next level. And my main goal in the end, it wasn't just growing the business itself, was always to be able to help the community. And
yeah,
more people I had in the school, more like better was helping the community where the school was located, right? And because I always focus in that, became very pleasurable for me. So I wasn't much like in terms of the financial of the school. I just was making sure like everyone were having like a great time, and jiu-jitsu was changing their lives. So that's
yeah,
what kept me always trying to become a better person in the business, because I knew I could fulfill more people through jiu-jitsu. And if I
mm,
lose a student, I would feel that I failed.
yeah, yeah. It's always that's something that no one really prepares you for. I remember when I had that first feeling of real loss when a student would leave. I remember two kids, Zachariah and Ibrahim. They'd been training for a few years, great kids, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we just want to leave to go do some football." I'm like, guys, I've been seeing you like multiple times a week, every week. We have a great time on the mats. You guys are getting great at jiu-jitsu. Please don't leave. Like I've invested so much into
It
like
breaks
just
your heart, doesn't it?
yeah, it just breaks your heart. Yeah. Um, Tell me, where did that kind of mission, purpose, drive, that kind of community thing originate for you? Was that back home growing up in Brazil, or where did that come from?
Man, Since young, I was very like into sport, and I used to love fighting. Like I tried different martial arts until someone took it to Jiu-Jitsu. I had no clue what Jiu-Jitsu was. It was 1999. And I'm always very aware of health, mental health, and physical health, and spiritual health. I have like the three of them very, very connected with me. Always fit, looking after my body, make sure my mind was in check, and my connection with the world, with the nature as well, was good. Um, and I have a very strong family orientation. I'm a very family person. And I believe when you live overseas and you can identify with that, you start looking from the outside what your life really is back
Mm.
home. And you start self-analyze yourself, like why you became the person you became, and who influenced you during life, even with like comments that you made before here that I made to you when we start working together. I believe you probably use some of those words in your jitsu and your
Absolutely,
business
man.
as well.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and then you start like, okay, I connected with that person that taught me this, that, and then you start understanding that like you become who you are with it's a connection of a lot of factors that happen in life. And then you start understanding that jiu-jitsu is something that really shapes your character. Like it's a sport nowadays that there's no everyone wins. You'll be like in the middle of the road. You're gonna have someone on top of you giving you like a hard time, and you have to survive. You have to fight back. You can't give up, right? Of
Yeah.
course, nowadays we tap and save and we give up, but it's a battle every roll of the week, and that shapes you in resilience, in confidence, in all the self-esteem, and that gives you more understanding who you became after a while. And you being a black belt is like, I believe around like the purple, brown, and black belt to start self-analyzing yourself a little bit more and how jiu-jitsu shaped you there. And then you start understanding that, wow, I became a very strong person, very confident. And that doesn't mean that I need to go out and fight anybody. That means that I have a self-esteem.
Mm.
Like no one will be able to put me down because I believe in myself so much, and I believe Jiu-Jitsu brought that to me, and I started understanding that's like, wow, I went overseas, and the Jiu-Jitsu gave me that sense of belonging. I found family,
Mm.
so there's a strong connection. And
Yeah.
at the same time, after I knowing that what Jiu-Jitsu has done to me, and I'm living from Jiu-Jitsu, I'm helping people to become better versions of themselves. So they gave me the sense of purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And for
think
me, that was the main thing.
that's really it's great about that. I was explaining to a friend this who it seems like a side point. He wanted to invest money into cryptocurrency, right? And like a Bitcoin. And but he also was someone who could in the next couple of years open a jiu-jitsu school. And we're not talking about huge amounts of money here either. And explain to him, it's like you could put the money into crypto and maybe you'll get some amazing return. You'll get like a 10x or 20x. But with the amount of money we're talking about, it's not life changing or anything like that. But if you put that into a service based business, and especially a jiu jitsu school, you'll get a far bigger return and it'll be last a lot longer, probably, with the way the risk works. And you'll also get to change people's lives and have a good impact in the world. Whereas you just sitting on some cryptocurrency doesn't change the world.
And yeah, It's exactly. I changed careers, T. When I came to Australia, coming from Brazil, living from Jiu-Jitsu back on the day was quite impossible,
Really?
right? And then I went to Australia and I tried a lot of different jobs and I follow a career of financial planning. And I got in the same idea that you just said before. Like I was, of course, helping people in a certain way, but it didn't fulfill me. Like it wasn't like I was helping a little bit financially, but it was just numbers, and it didn't mean much to me. And I see a lot of people that come from a corporate world down to jiu-jitsu business, and sometimes even the financially is a little bit less, but the fulfillment is very unique.
Yeah.
Like when you help someone that it's what the in the Gracie family I always said, like my jiu-jitsu, as Helio Gracie used to say, it's made for that guy, the little one, the one that has difficulties, the one that has to overcome a lot of challenge. The big tough guy, he doesn't need my jiu-jitsu, right? So that little one, that guy with like a low self-confidence are the ones that, or that girl, that are the ones that they need my jiu-jitsu. It was the Gracie jiu-jitsu back on the day. And and nowadays I understand very well. I'm much more happier having like for example, a neurodivergent child going through jiu-jitsu and become a very strong person in life along the years and seeing that results, it gives me much more fulfillment than have like a world champion underneath me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a different feeling. So of course we still have that. Let's make the world champions, but we are making like world champions for life,
Yeah.
and people they need the most. Otherwise, the society just gonna swallow them up, and they will have no chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually remember Victor speaking about this. I think it was at one of the summer camps, and I was saying, "Oh well, look, AOJ just won all these medals, and it was one of the big Pan Kids or something like that, I think, and with only this many competitors, and GB had this many competitors. It was like 10 to like 150. And he's like, yeah, well, AOJ won 10 medals. GB changed 150 kids' lives.
Yes, and that's something that in our industry, no one ever understood the past, I believe, 20, no, I would say 20, but the past 15 years of Gracie Barra, right? A lot of people they start thinking Gracie Barra lost its toughness as a fighter, and we never did. We never did. We just focused for a period of time for Jiu-Jitsu for everyone. So we start helping people because the Jiu-Jitsu where I started, like I would believe only 10% of my students will stay in the kind of environment I started jiu-jitsu. It was a hostile kind of environment. You're made to be fighters, gladiators. You're like made to go and win competition and prove you have like the best team in town. That was what it used to be back on the day,
Yeah.
right? And it changed. And nowadays, all of those people they didn't understand much what Gracie Barra was doing it. They are copying that and that's amazing because for those ones copying it's amazing because they are helping the mission that we have, but we still have those ones they don't understand and they play in a different way, but it's fine.
Well, I think it actually brings us on to an interesting point. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit here because I do want to speak about how you went from finance into opening your first school. But one thing GB Bondi manages really well is both commercial success in being able to run a large school, lots of students, but also manages to run a very successful kids competition team. And on the face of it, sometimes those things can seem like they are opposed, right? You need the tough, hard training. You need, all these all this extra time, and that takes away potentially from having a more beginner-friendly, more classes for beginners and things like that. So, how did you manage to do that really?
Man, uh, again, it's all about who has been in your path before, and if you took notes from their advice, right? So when I decided to open Gracie Barra Bondi wasn't my first, was my
I
second.
remember, right? Was it Orange?
Was Gracie Barra Hornsby was my
Hornsby. Okay.
first one. Um, and I saw Professor Marcelo, which is our regional director for Oceania, being able to have a living from Jiu-Jitsu. And the structure was very tough training, but the structure was different. It was we started getting the Jiu-Jitsu for everyone. And Professor Piu Piu, in one time he came to Australia, I was asking him a lot of questions, and he said to me, Pedro, if you really want to have a successful school, we shouldn't focus in competition team. You should grow your school to around 200 students first. And then from that point, you start building your competition team. And the reason for that is if you focus in the competition too early, the competitors, they won't understand how to train jiu-jitsu for everyone, and they will scare people away, and your school won't grow, and you won't be able to help as many people as you want. So if you want to help the most people as possible, focus in jiu-jitsu for everyone. And when you get to that point, and then you separate a special class, a special group to start building your competitors. And because I always had this competitor inside me, everything that I did in life since I was very young was very competitive, and I believed I missed out my competition years in jiu-jitsu because moving to Australia and get life on the way, and I never had someone mentoring me like you can achieve big kind of thing, and time goes by and you see like, man, now it's gone. And and I was like, I want to do that in a different way, but I probably not gonna do myself. So let's focus on the kids because they are the future. And the adults, they have like a time frame to reach the peak. And if you start late in the day as an adult, for you to reach the peak, it will be too late, in my opinion, for
Mm.
the main divisions in the world class jiu-jitsu. So if I start with the kids and then those kids turn into like a juvenile and an adult, that's gonna be the chance. But it's like a 5 to 10 years project that no
Yeah.
one can see that's happening. Today we are collecting those fruits from the past, right? So that's pretty much what I did. I focused in the kids in a certain age and slowly building up that competition team and developing a way to teach kids like not only jiu-jitsu but mindset as well, and more in a more like a friendly environment so they you don't scare them away and nurture them with the growth mindset to keep doing. And of course you end up losing a lot of kids on the way because as you said, like parents they change ideas and the kids too, but eventually you filter and you keep some.
Yeah.
And those some become like the ones representing you in the competition, and they are like paving the way for the next generation. They become role models as well,
Mm.
and that's pretty much what happened.
And I think after once they become that leader, I think competition can really help kids become. They then start to also give back a lot more and also become great advocates for helping the beginners and growing that side of things. So it almost comes back full circle, I've seen.
Yeah, clearly, and they if you have the right values, see, because
Mm.
one of the things that was very clear for all our competitors is I don't really care if you become a world champion since you have the right attitude. Because if you become a world champion and you have the wrong attitude, for me doesn't mean anything, and I don't want those people with me. So I always nurture the way to be humble, to give back, because sometimes competitors they can be very selfish in a good way, but teaching them the value to give back and be humble for me was the most important thing. So you create that kind of legacy, let's call.
Yeah, and it goes back to that long-term strategy as well that you were talking about. You need a few years and a few more years, and then and and you're not creating just superstars as quickly as possible, but you're trying to instill those values, and that takes time as well.
It takes time, and people they understand because they are impatient, they want results too quick. And then, and some of our kids, like the parents, they don't understand as well, and they end up leaving our schools to come to another school because they think there's a better training there.
Has
Uh,
educating, parents, whether the competition team or just in general about jiu-jitsu, has educating the parents and adults maybe to a lesser extent been a big part of owning a school for you?
completely. And till nowadays, my main issue is how, literally, I say, how can I open their heads and put that information there that
Mm.
they can understand? Which means, like, do I need to make videos with like images for visual people? Do I need to write something more complex? So for those ones they like to read in between the lines, do I have to give like a storytelling for them to understand with comparison, with a metaphor, what it is? And that's what I've been doing along the years, and I'm still in that process,
Yeah.
doing even more. So the people, and if they really understand what it's about, if they give up jiu-jitsu or they move from a school that have a strong values to another school that might give them a little bit extra in the beginning, uh, uh, if they move away, it's because they did understand. And again, I don't blame them, T. I
Mm.
blame me. And that's what makes me very different to a lot of people. Because my blame is, Pedro, you didn't communicate very well.
Right.
But it takes time to communicate very well because we're still learning how to communicate very well. And we end up losing people. And sometimes you can communicate very well, and you're always going to have a case of a parent or an adult that's not about your communication, it's about their understanding and their perception.
Mm.
Sometimes your understand is good because you're ready for that understanding. But
Right. Yeah.
sometimes you just understand 3 years later.
Yeah.
It's like jiu-jitsu. You see a position that's like, man, doesn't make sense at all. And 3 years later, it's like, man, that position, I've seen that before, and now it makes a
So,
perfect sense.
happens so many times, doesn't it?
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
blame them since I did everything that I could and I didn't fail in any part of the process because I see a lot of school owners failing in not treating them very nice, or the school not being very professional. It, you know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
canceling classes, you didn't tell about what's happening, and then man, like if you didn't do your homework, they have all the rights to go and find someone else. But if you've done everything that you could and they still going away, it's man, let them go because
Yeah.
it's not supposed to be around you. That's how I believe.
Yeah. So walk me through the journey. How did you go from working in finance to opening your first school to all the way to today?
Man, I'll tell this. I'll try to get this story quite short, right? But I came from a family where my parents they work quite hard to build what they built, and they gave me like a very comfortable life. And in Brazil, when you come in families that in that kind of mindset, you have no choice, but you have to finish school, you have to finish university, and you have to get a considerable, like a good job to be able to make a living in Brazil comfortably, right? So it was never an option to go and try careers that was unproven
Hmm.
in Brazil. So you always think about something like law or medicals or finance or something that people believe it's the way to create a comfortable financial life,
Yeah.
which I have my own opinions nowadays. But then I went to Australia, I had to do any job that I could, and then I was always very good with numbers, and I love economy. And I always study economy and geopolitics and, around the world and how economy works, and I loved my maths. And
A quick
I,
point, a side point. I remember very early, like very early into the COVID pandemic, Professor Pedro sitting me down and being like, "Look, there's going to be a huge like no one realized it. Nothing had even like it was like on the news, and like Professor Pedro was like, "Look, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. There's going to be a huge recession. This is what's going to happen to the economy." And like, lo and behold, like all of those things happened.
and I was always trying to find the opportunities in that.
Yeah.
I heard about that because economy is literally Tiernan. One thing goes up, one thing goes
Yeah.
down. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
something's going down, it's because something's going up. You just
Hmm.
need to understand that, right? So I got into finance and I got my license to work in Australia. And at the same time, I became a father very young. I was 24 years old. But at the same phase, I was very struggling financially and I loved Jiu Jitsu so much. And just before I came to Australia, I was like, man, if I could live from Jiu Jitsu, it would be a dream. I had that like idea when I left Brazil. So when I got to the financial planning, I decided to give it a go and open a Gracie Barra school, which back in the day wasn't very professional in terms of running the business. The Gracie Barra was still in its 2005 mode. I think in 2007 is when like they switched quite a lot to the franchise structure. So I start using a local wrestling community center where they had a wrestling mat where I have to clean every day that I was teaching. I was offering class 3 nights a week, only 1 hour every night. And at the same time, I was in finance. And I had this idea, man, like I imagine if it works. And I saw Professor Marcelo succeeding in a certain way, and I was like, man, if it works, I have like a choice. And I always refer things to Jiu-Jitsu. To imagine you're in the mount, you have one hand on the collar, other hand like embracing the person's arm. How many choice of submissions you have there?
Right. Yeah.
Jiu-Jitsu, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see a choke and you see an arm lock. So I had my financial planning, but at the same time, I was very in the beginning. At the same time, I kept training, but I was like, man, instead training, why I can use 2 or 3 of the days a week that I train and I teach.
Yeah.
It'll be the same because I'm already in that time of the day. I'm already on the mats, and I still have my career. And then people start turning up more to the classes, and they start asking for more classes. And at the same time, I had, unfortunately, my relationship fell apart, and I had two young kids, and that took a lot of pressure on me, and my financial planning was kind of like unstable at the time because I was in the very beginning of the career and there was no much like income yet from that.
Right.
And I had to go back to Brazil. I had to go back to Brazil. Things got a bit hairy, and I had to go back to Brazil to. It was very stressful to you, like if the separation, two young kids, and I lost all my rights to see my kids, and being a very family person, that was very heartbroken, and I think I was once in life broken, like a spiritually broken, mentally broken. I was a mess. So my parents called me and said, Pedro, come back here. We'll look after you. Rebuild yourself. Go and visit the kids anytime you want. So I went back to Brazil and I had this new beginning. It was very tough. And I tried living in Brazil as a stockbroker.
Ah.
I studied a lot. I got a license. I did everything, but every month my paycheck was like in Brazil wasn't that much in the beginning of that career. It's quite tough. Takes time in the stockbroking for you to have like a more comfort situation. And then in one trip to Australia visiting my children, I called my family back and I said, listen, I'm not coming back. And then I was back living Professor Marcio, who took Gracie Barra Hornsby,
Okay.
because yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
invited him to be a partner, and then after I pretty much sold my part for like $1,500. uh, and then and I went back to Australia. I was living a couch for a while. I was teaching class in his school that used to be my school back on the day. And I said I gonna make it again. But I want to go to this location because I identified myself very well with the community of the eastern suburbs. And I was like, I want that location. It was a very expensive area. No one want to go that area because it was quite hard to start jiu-jitsu in there. And I said, I've done it once, and I saw Gracie Barra Hornsby being stable, and that's it's like a year and a half after.
Hmm.
And I was like, man, I can do it again. I saw Professor Marcelo being very stable, and there was two other schools, Professor Danilo from Gracie Barra Central Coast and Professor Guga, Gracie Barra Newcastle. And I was like, I'm gonna do it again. So I had to find the finance for that.
Wow.
And I was like, man, I have nothing. How can I afford to start a business? And I asked my mom to ask my dad. I said that I want that amount of money. And my dad said, listen, I'll give you half of that. You figure out, find a partner. I no. And then I start talking to my mom, I don't want a partner. I know I can make it. And if I have a partner, I'm gonna have to, it's not gonna be what I want. And then after a few months, I made a business plan. But I studied finance back in the day. I didn't finish uni by the way. I left uni to go to Australia, but I learned quite a lot. And I made a business plan to show him with the examples of the other schools that was already operating in Australia. And I convinced my mom to convince him to give him the second part
Yeah.
of that money. And I remember he saying, listen, I only want one thing from you. It's 100% jiu-jitsu, nothing else.
Hmm. Interesting. Why did he ask that?
My dad is quite a wise person as well, running his own business for so many years, and he asked that because nowadays I believe you are you're a bit younger than me, but you're much mature age to understand that it's like jiu-jitsu. When people get very close to go to the next level, they give up because things get hard,
Mm.
and then you start a new thing. And then when you start getting very close, it's when things get hard, it's when you close, but then people are like, it's not working, they start another thing.
Yeah.
And you're always restarting things in life.
They lose focus. They kind of they don't just they don't live in that pain enough to then get to the next level.
And then he said, listen, you have to promise that you are 100% in, there's no distractions, and you never ever ask me for money again. And that's going to be part of your heritage anyway. They're going to
Yeah, yeah.
discount that. I said, done. The only thing I said to him, but I need to work as a security guard on the weekends only,
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
because I need to make money for the week until
Yeah.
the school takes over. Because I just had enough money to pay
Just about live.
for mats and rent, pretty much. I
Yeah.
had nothing else. So I still had to make money for a living. And then I started Gracie Barra Bondi. Was interesting. The highest rent in Australia was a guinea pig, not only for Gracie Barra in Australia, for the Gracie Barra around the world.
Yeah.
And within 2 years, the school became quite successful. And then I remember my name was into the Gracie Barra board as an example that you don't need to be a world champion to have a successful school. I have an example of Professor Pedro having a very successful school, and he never fought a competition as a black belt. Until my brown belt, I competed a lot, but then a black belt, I never fought. And then I focused completely in my students. I didn't focus on myself. I just want them to have everything that Jiu-Jitsu could give. So I sacrificed my competition career over the students. And I gave everything that I could, and I had this promise to my dad, and I always want to prove to my family that I could do things by myself without asking for help.
Mm.
And that's what I wanted the most, is to show my parents that I could make a living and I could provide for my family. And through Jiu-Jitsu, that was a dream.
And when you made GB Bondi and it was kind of recognized as being successful, did your dad give you much credit? Like, how did that conversation go?
Man, my dad's a very interesting person. Like we don't have deep conversations, but I know he watches from above. Since I'm not asking for help, he knows I'm doing okay. And I don't think he really understands the magnitude of like how committed I am in Gracie Barra, not only in the school but in the community around the world. But he knows I can provide for 4 children, like and my wife, and have like a good life
Yeah.
from jiu-jitsu. And I think that for him is, as a father, um, I think a father becomes very fulfilled with a son or a daughter when they can see that the offspring can fly by themselves. You know what I
Mm.
mean? I think that's the
Yeah.
big weight they take over their back when they see the kids be able to live life without financial trouble. However, the financial get established at a certain point, I believe, for those ones that like understand how things work. But then other problems in life start happening with relationships and healthy and it become like a jiu-jitsu. It's every day you're solving problems on the mat and every day you're solving problems in your life and not let those things consume your mind
Yeah.
and take you down.
So every time you solve a problem, another problem will be created, and hopefully the next problem is easier and better. But
When see back on the day when you were like working together in Bondi, I had this student. He was in his 60s, but he had a kid training with us. And I remember I said to him, and I said to him, maybe it was before you were there. I said to him, I can't wait for the time that I can solve all my problems and have like a comfort life. And he laughed to me. He said, Pedro, I'll tell you, this time will never arrive.
was that
Why you need to be
Jeff
good
by
in
any chance?
was I can't remember his name,
Mm,
but what wasn't Jack. But he said that time will never arrive, Pedro.
yeah.
It's you just have to be good in solving problems and solve them quickly and move to the next one. However, T, one thing that it's very interesting here for this episode is, and I always tell Gracie Barra Bondi team and all the teams that we are running, when you have a problem, and I do this with my family, with my kids, my parents, when you have a problem, T, you can solve that problem, right? But I remember a professor of mine back on the day. I used to ask professor, how do I escape from triangle? I said, Pedro, I can teach you like maybe three, four, five different ways to escape from triangle, but that's not gonna solve your problem. You're only gonna solve that problem when you avoid the problem to happen in the first place. So the
Mm,
answer is don't let people get in a triangle choke. So every time that we have a problem in the school or in business, you're like, okay, I can call that student, I can solve the problem, correct? But that doesn't solve the problem. It's a band-aid because the problem is going to keep happening. If that student had that experience that made that complaint, that experience will be happening with other students.
yeah.
So how can we go in the root of the problem and avoid the problem to happen? How can you avoid the triangle to happen when you're rolling? And
Yeah.
that's when you get good in any part of your life.
See, not just trying to treat the symptoms, but look at their cause.
And avoid them to happen. I remember my father always used to say, was a saying in Portuguese that say, não adianta chorar pelo leite derramado, which means there is no reason to cry for the spilled milk on the floor, because you can't bring it back. So you have to move it on. But
Yeah.
don't let that spill in the first place, right?
Yeah. In fact, Braulio, when he was over for doing a seminar, he uses the same concept when he was
The
teaching,
metaphor.
and we have like the signature wall, and then he put his signature in, "Don't cry over spilt milk."
Ah, he does the same,
Yeah,
same.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, tell me, what do you attribute the early success to from GB Bondi? Like, why do you feel it was so successful quite quickly within those first 2-3 years?
And it's a combination of factors, T. One, um, as I said before, I was literally broken once, and I believe that man, there's no way to have a stronger to be a stronger man than someone that has already been on their knees, broken, and have to rebuild from the scratch. So, and I didn't have anything to lose. So a lot of times I can understand why people are reluctant in starting a journey in running a school because they have to step back a few steps to restart, right? Unless
Yeah.
you're very comfortable financially to invest quite a significant amount of capital to start that school. But I had nothing to fall. I was like already living in someone's couch, having like nothing, and and I had all the time. I was, of course, I had the two kids, but I didn't have access to them very often, so I had like a lot of time on my hands, and I had a dream, and I had like a word with my parents to make it happen, and also I put myself in a situation where I have the highest rent, man, perhaps around the world in a Gracie Barra industry or even the jiu-jitsu industry, because back in the day it was very industrial area, and I was the first one to be in a retail area,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that and I have knowledge of like I'm very like into psychology. I like to understand very well the behind the scenes of everything, and I'm quite like a charismatic person. I connect very well with people, and I'm a carer. I really care about people, how they feel, and everything. And I believe we are similar in that point.
Yeah.
We are like that too. Um, and that kind of I have the grit, the competitor, plus I have the characteristics that I nowadays I understand that plays a big role in the industry and facilitates quite a lot. And the I'm always hungry for learning, and I don't take no as an answer. And if I do mistakes, I don't only correct the mistakes as I avoid them to happen again. And I'm a very like consistent person. Like I have the same breakfast every day for the season. I have this. If I go to restaurants, I always order the same food. I like to have routine and consistency in what I do. And I like to be very professional and organized. Like my clothes are all like in color coordinated. I'm kind of OCD in a certain way.
And I guess with those, if you were looking at, if you were making a new school owner and you needed to put different values and characteristics into them, would those be the kind of characteristics you would want for a school owner? Maybe someone you'd want to work with in the future?
Man, I believe I have lots of the characteristics, but I fail in a few, and those that I fail, I try to build that on me, which is very hard, but it's possible, but it's quite hard. So literally a year ago, T, Professor Ricky and I, Ricky,
Us?
been working together for so many years now. He's the one running pretty much Gracie Barra Bondi. We took the advice of Gracie Barra about that book called Pinnacle,
Okay, I've heard of it.
right? It's how like a structure an organization, but then we have to go back to the very meaning of the core values, the mission, the vision, and break down to like to the dot of every single thing. And then we took 6 months building that, which we broke down like the meaning of every single area in the school. Since like the program director with the characteristics like people teaching kids in a certain by age they need to have based in psychology, so and make those people that work with our team to understand those values and play by those values was the biggest change that ever happened. And those people that are not aligned with those values, uh, they organically asked to leave, and I believe it was good for them because it's not that you have to have those values to go ahead in life, but you have to have those values to be in the community that we are working with jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
And that played like the biggest change for us. That's when we clarified that very well, and for me was even like an awakening. And that's the same time that I came from the LeaderCon in Arizona, the first one that I connected with a lot of people, and they made us think a lot about why, and why.
Mm.
It's why, how, and what, but why? You always go for the why until you go deep into the meaning of what you're doing, and then we start communicate that very well to your team, and the students start like indirectly feeling what's happening, and the energy of the school changed to a better, and the team is working together, and everything gets lighter and happier, and you have process to everything that we do. We have playbooks, you have everything very well structured, so that play a quite big.
Yeah. With Gracie Barra, obviously we talk a lot about values, and it's kind of intrinsic to everything we do. For you, was it always going to be like your school was always going to be part of Gracie Barra, or how did that come about?
And I trained jiu-jitsu back in the day in Brazil, there was no Gracie Barra where I come from. The Gracie Barra was more like in Rio only. Um, but I was lucky enough to have professors. They follow very good values, which I call the samurai code of conduct. Because jiu-jitsu could be like it could be with guys they don't take that way, and it can be with guys they very like Japanese culture orientated as a samurai with all the respect and discipline and brotherhood, sisterhood kind of way. Um, and then Gracie Barra and I, we were like a perfect match. What Master Carlos Gracie Jr. has as the values was exactly my values in life, and with my family, and with my mentors, which instructors from different sports that I did for a long time as well, that helped shape the way I am. And I'm very big in that values. So it was quite like a perfect match. I didn't need to educate myself. I had those values within me. So when you talk about brotherhood, development, um, we need to describe very well those values for people that don't really understand the concept of the word.
Hmm.
You have to break down in a lot of different ways for them to understand what is brotherhood or sisterhood. What is it for you? What is it literally? And what does Gracie Barra mean with that?
Yeah, like what behaviors does that actually mean?
Exactly, and then when you get to a mature age, you start understanding that people they don't think alike. People have the different experience in life. They have different ways to see the world. They come from different cultures. They have different ethnicities, different religions, different beliefs, and like the meaning of things for them can be quite different sometimes. So you have to break down into a very particular way for them to understand exactly what you mean with those things.
I think, well, as you know, when we talk about values a lot at GB, like I say, but sometimes that and other things, I guess, related with the GB brand, people get a bit of hate, get a bit of people that disparage or talk negatively about Gracie Barra. Do you feel like any or much of that is warranted, or can you see any parts of that, or where do you sit within those lines?
I have to be very careful with my words, right? I don't know if you remember how I am, but I'm
I remember.
very like straight to the point. But I have to be very careful with my words. I believe, T, that anything that you are doing very well, you're gonna have people loving you, and you're gonna have people hating you. Anything, anything, anything. Some people they be jealous. Some people they don't understand what you're doing. Some people they have different beliefs. Some people they will see it's like, wow, you are changing the world. Congratulations. But sometimes you have those people that are friendly, but in the end they have that envy, that feeling of jealousy, and in a wrong way. And they close to you, smiling to you. Those are the worst. But the ones they talk straight to your face that don't like you, I like them.
Mm.
I like them because at least you're already very clear that we are going to different ways. We don't need to pretend to be friends.
Yeah, you know what you get.
Problem are the ones that again, the problem are the ones that like they pretend they are with you and they just waiting for the right opportunity. And I never believed that in the world you had people like that because that's not how I am. But the more you live, there's an old saying that probably might have that one too. More I live, more I like my dog. Which means you get like a very, like you probably been through situations, I believe, but you get very disappointed with people.
Yeah.
And I do my best. I try my best. I'm very just. I, 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 I don't step in people's toes, and I'm very clear to what I want. But back now to your question, because I know a lot of people they come to me and say, Professor, why and students, why people they all talk badly in social media, for example, right? And I said to them, man, have you seen anyone with like successful, not like only financially successful, but successful in life with morals, getting in debates online, putting someone down?
Mm.
No, you don't see them. So there's two people in life that go ahead that try to go ahead in life. The ones they work in silence and the hard work will make the noise, and the ones they try to make the noise and they try to badmouth everybody to get attention. And those are the ones that are not gonna go ahead in life. They go for a certain point because society is crazy enough to let those people. But later in life, karma will catch up with them. So there's an old saying in Portuguese that say, o que vem de baixo não me atinge. Probably gonna have to
You
match
got to
it to that.
trademark these, yeah.
Which means what comes from below doesn't reach me. So you only bad mouth if you are on top. If you're on the bottom, no one will bad mouth you. And the problem is people they don't understand what Gracie Barra is doing to the world. We are in a business of self-development. We are not creating warriors necessarily. Of course, we will create a lot of them because they will be among the people you're working with. But we are in a era of like self-development. We are helping people to have the necessary tools to navigate along life, to keep the head like stand, looking forward, resilient, because life will crash you to the ground, right? And school don't teach kids emotional intelligence. School just, for in my opinion, is kind of like a not didn't evolve. So we are a complement of like a human being needs to navigate like a life.
Yeah.
And those haters that talk badly about us, they normally talk badly about, they call like you guys are a cult, for example. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, yeah.
But in my understanding, they are quite ignorant in a way. They don't understand what the word cult means. And we are a cult. A cult means culture, right? But they label cult as like you are someone that doctrinate people and you make them do what you want. No, we just value our culture so much that we can't have space for people that want to work outside the culture, and that's how society always worked. As soon we start losing the culture, things go south, and we are living right now in the world like that. There's a lot of mixing of things that like creating like a mess,
I
right?
guess
So
when you go back to, you mentioned about how GB communicates what it's actually trying to achieve. It resonated a little bit with what you said earlier around, you don't necessarily blame the other people. It might be on us to better communicate. Like, no, this is what we stand for. These are what we're trying to achieve. And it's only because you don't really see what the broader mission is and the goal is that you might attribute these negative connotations, like the negative side of cult. But there's lots of aspects to it that are also important. Like many big companies early on, like Apple, would be considered very cultish. They've got this very charismatic leader. They are for creatives. They tell you who they're for and who they're not for. They've got a common enemy in Microsoft or whatever, you know. So it's like there's lots of these aspects that play into it.
and that's why like all those comments with my students, they ask me, I give them an answer. Listen, they don't understand what we are doing here. They have an idea that people has to look angry, they have to be cheating in the health to go ahead in the training. The language on the mats of those schools are not compatible to what we do. They don't follow the code, the samurai code of conduct, right? And one example, T, there's a lot of jiu-jitsu schools and Gracie Barra that I really admire them. And there's lots of them that I don't put my foot. And even competitions. There's competitions in Australia that, man, I don't put my foot in that competition because of the rules they play, which is against the values that I have, which is one of them is safety first,
Mm.
right? But there's a lot of schools, they embrace the jiu-jitsu for everyone and big names schools. And man, I admire them because they are changing the world together with us. We are helping the community. But then we have a lot of the smallest ones, full of anger. They just want to beat competitions and they badmouth the others, and the school, they don't have the hygiene, the language in the school. For me, it's not what I praise. The culture is not very aligned with the Japanese way of life, and they are making the name of jiu-jitsu uh, uh, um, how do you say in English when you kind of destroying
Like
the
disparaging or like worsening.
disparaging,
I don't know. Yeah.
and that's something that in Brazil the jiu-jitsu was very bad seen for a while. Even when I started, my parents didn't want me to because the media would show people doing the wrong thing with jiu-jitsu on the streets. And it took us a long time to bring where it is, and we still have those small schools still doing the same. And that for me is like, man, it's not what it's about.
Yeah.
But in the world, it's how it is.
Mm. On a more positive note, then tell me a little bit about what the future holds for you and for your, your schools you have in Australia, and is there any big goals coming up? Any big projects you're working on?
I can share here. I don't like to share much because I believe when you share much, you inspire a lot of people, but at the same time, it's a lot of people they start not liking you. But my vision is expansion. Expansion because I believe the world can become a better world to live. Mainly nowadays that the world being divided quite in different segments with the civilization. But I believe Jiu Jitsu brings people together, and the way Gracie Barra plays make sure everyone is unified on the mat, right? Since our uniforms or kimonos make everyone, there's no difference in there.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is one. But expansion is my way to go here, T. And because I had so many people that's been working with me together, and I've been selling the dream for them, and Rick is for example the main one. I have to make sure I'm creating more opportunities to be able to fulfill what he needs and everybody else in our team. So
Yeah.
everyone can have a very comfortable life through Jiu-Jitsu, helping the most people as possible. So I'm very committed to Gracie Barra. This year we start working the organization level, helping Gracie Barra Oceania with the ambassador program for Australia. But at the same time, we have to be very, very careful in keeping the legacy, which is quite hard, is keeping the culture passing to the next generation without losing the main characteristic.
Yeah.
That's the hardest, and that's what Gracie Barra is working very hard on it, and that's the resistance a lot of schools they have, because they all want to do in a certain way. But for us to have a Gracie Barra in 100 years from now with that same essence that we have nowadays, it's the goal. The legacy first, and then expansion. And plus, we create a formula that now is easy to replicate in
Mm-hmm.
schools. We just have to make sure the team operating the new schools um, aligned with the formula and willing to put that in action. So
Amazing.
yeah, so you're running few schools. Like this year, we have one coming up this February now, the newest ones,
Oh, amazing.
and probably another two or three for the 2026.
Well, we'll have to do another podcast soon because we've got already been recording for a while. But I'd love to speak to you more about GB Bondi and your other schools and new schools, and that greater mission that you're on, and also GB Oceania because I know you play a big role in it. And I've always thought that they're probably one of the most, if not the most, organised and well put together region for GB. So I'd love to talk about that and the business side of things, but let's call it a day for today.
Man, I'm more than happy to help and to share as much as I can, T. It was a very good pleasure to see you, to talk to you, and eventually see you soon somewhere in the world.
I hope so, man. I always learn so much when I get to speak to you, so thank you very much.
Thank you, T. Thank you.